Rules of the Road, Chapter 10. When I woke up the next morning, Mrs. Gladstone couldn't get out of bed. "This blasted leg," she said, struggling against the pain. I tried to help her up, but she cried out. It hurt too much. "I'm going to get the doctor, ma'am." "No, you're not." She tried to get up again and flopped back down. "Mrs. Gladstone, you need medical help, and I'm going to get it for you." I threw on jeans, Reeboks, my yellow Barcelona t-shirt, and ran out the door. The elevator took forever to come. When it got to my floor, it was packed with bleary-eyed Marcoy Electronics people who looked like they'd spent the night hanging upside down in the meat locker. I jammed in anyway, rode to the lobby, found Chuck, the assistant hotel manager, who made a few calls and finally found an orthopedist who could come to the hotel. I went back to the room to tell Mrs. Gladstone the doctor was coming. She wasn't happy to see me. "You defied me," she said. "Yes, ma'am, I did." I looked down. I had practiced defying adults. My father was always telling me he was fine when he was drunk, always telling me he didn't need my help when the plain truth was he needed my help, sometimes just to sit down. Some adults don't always know how to take care of themselves. She lay there looking old and miserable. Both Harry and Marguerite feel I should attempt to stop the sale of the shoe warehouse. Attempt to stop the sale to the shoe warehouse, she said quietly. "Can you do that?" "I don't know. Harry Bender has begun to call investors and other store managers to get their feedback." Mrs. Gladstone pulled at the lace fringe of her nightgown and shivered in the warm room. She didn't look like she could stop a paper airplane. "I want you to call the doctor and tell him not to come," she ordered. I took a deep breath. "Mrs. Gladstone, you can keep being the tough person you are and still have a bad hip and need some help." She looked away. "Because if you don't get some help, it's going to eventually affect your strength. And something tells me that if you and Mr. Bender are going to try to save this company, you're going to need all the strength you can get. And I'm not just talking legs here." She sniffed. "I don't know beans about saving companies, but I know how it works in families, and believe me, you've got to pull everyone you trust together in one place and talk real clear and plain and just let everybody else do the same, because there's power in truth. See, for too long at my house, we just let Dad's drinking go by without saying anything much about it, calling it a little problem, things like that. You've got to call a thing by its name, and that's what lets the truth out where it can get some fresh air." Mrs. Gladstone studied my face. "You have learned a great deal in your 16 years. Not really." There was a knock on the door. She folded her arms tight. "I don't want to see that doctor." I walked to the door. "I know you don't, but you've got to." "And what gives you the right to order me around?" I took a deep breath, fished around in my pocket. "I have the car keys, ma'am." I held them up. "No disrespect intended." Mrs. Gladstone grunted. I looked through the peephole at the doctor standing in the hall, opened the door, and let her in. Dr. Macmillan wasn't taking any of Mrs. Gladstone's guff, which I was glad to see. It gets lonely being the only reasonable person in the room. She told Mrs. Gladstone her hip was in bad shape, and got to hear her speech about how that leg was going to make it to Texas. Dr. Macmillan said she needed to get x-rays, which made her split an atom, especially when the 2 ambulance men came to carry her off to the hospital, and she declared she wasn't going to be hoisted from bed by strangers, and rapped one of the attendants on the shoulder with her cane. "Jenna will help me," she declared. "Is she always like this?" the attendant asked, rubbing his shoulder. "Pretty much." I leaned over the bed so Mrs. Gladstone could put her arms around my neck, and I could lift her up. This seemed dumb, with 2 strong men in the room who did these things regularly. Of course, I was taller than both of them. Pain flashed across her face, but I got her up, and eventually, after a few false starts, into the ambulance where she would not lie down on the cot. She sat there staring straight ahead, bony arms crossed tightly across her chest. informing the attendant she did not need her blood pressure checked. The problem was her hip. I said, "They're going to take it eventually, Mrs. Gladstone, here or at the hospital. My mom's a nurse, and you can't come in with a hangnail and get it done without someone checking your blood pressure." I looked at her face, how hard and determined it was. I thought about what she and her husband had to do to build their company from the ground floor up, store by store, all 176 of them, for all those years. Women weren't in business much back then, and I bet she knocked their socks off. I took a real chance with my future. I leaned close to her ear and said, "Save it, Mrs. Gladstone, for the real fight, you know?" She sniffed hard. Then gradually her face relaxed. She nodded slightly. "Well, for mercy's sweet sake," she barked at the attendant, "are you going to take my blood pressure or not?"